I didn't sign up to date someone in a wheelchair. This is ridiculous. The man's voice cut through the elegant ambiance of the upscale restaurant like a blade, his face twisted in disgust as he stood abruptly from the table. Amelia Carter felt her heart shatter as tears welled in her eyes, her hands trembling on the wheels of her chair. The surrounding diners pretended not to notice, but their pitying glances burned into her skin. Michael Reed, pushing his janitor's cart nearby, witnessed everything and felt something stir in his chest. He approached her table, pulling out a clean handkerchief from his pocket, his voice gentle but firm. "You deserve better than someone who can't see your worth." Amelia Carter had once been the brightest star in the financial investment world, her name whispered with reverence in boardrooms across the country. At 35, she commanded respect as CEO of one of the most prestigious investment firms in New York, her sharp mind and keen instincts having built an empire from the ground up. But that was before the accident 5 years ago, before the drunk driver ran the red light and changed everything in a single, devastating instant. The doctors had been brutally honest about her prognosis. She would never walk again. The damage to her spinal cord was irreversible, confining her to a wheelchair for the rest of her life. Yet Amelia had refused to let it break her spirit. She returned to work. After months of grueling physical therapy, adapting her office, her home, her entire world to accommodate her new reality. The business world still respected her abilities, but she could see the shift in their eyes. The way conversations halted when she entered a room, the careful distance people maintained as if her condition might somehow be contagious. Behind the confident exterior she presented to the world, Amelia harbored a deep loneliness that gnawed at her during quiet moments. She longed for genuine connection, for someone who could see past the wheelchair to the woman she still was inside. The dating world had become a minefield of disappointment. Men who seemed interested online would ghost her the moment she mentioned her disability. Those who agreed to meet often couldn't hide their discomfort, their eyes constantly drawn to the chair, as if it were a third person at the table. Tonight's blind date had been arranged by a well-meaning colleague who insisted that James was different, that he was mature and understanding. The rejection had been swift and cruel, confirming her worst fears about her romantic prospects. Michael Reed understood loss in ways that most people couldn't fathom. At 38, he wore his grief like a well-worn coat, comfortable in its familiarity but heavy on his shoulders. 6 years ago, he had been a rising star in financial analysis, working for a prominent firm where his insights were valued and his future seemed limitless. He had a beautiful wife, Sarah, and a baby daughter who lit up their world. Then came the diagnosis: aggressive brain cancer. The 18 months that followed were a blur of hospital rooms, treatments that offered hope, then snatched it away, and watching the woman he loved fade before his eyes. When Sarah finally passed, something inside Michael shattered. He couldn't return to the world of high finance, couldn't pretend that market trends and profit margins mattered when his daughter had lost her mother and he had lost his soulmate. He sold their house, downsized to a modest apartment, and took a job as a janitor at the very building where he once worked as an analyst. The work was simple, predictable, and most importantly, it allowed him to be there for Emily every morning and every night. His colleagues from his former life sometimes recognized him, their faces registering shock and pity. But Michael had made peace with his choice. His daughter needed stability, routine, and above all, a father who was present. Emily Reed was 7 years old and possessed the kind of resilience that only children who have experienced early loss can develop. She had her mother's artistic soul and her father's analytical mind, creating elaborate drawings that told stories of princesses who were also scientists and dragons who were misunderstood rather than evil. Her teachers often commented on her emotional maturity, the way she seemed to understand things beyond her years. She didn't remember much about her mother, just fragments of lullabies and the scent of lavender, but she knew the shape of her father's sadness and had learned to navigate around it with the grace of someone much older. She would leave little notes in his lunchbox with smiley faces and hearts, and always made sure to tell him she loved him before bed. In her young mind, if she loved him enough, Maybe the sadness would eventually go away. Margaret Reed, Michael's mother, had aged considerably since her daughter-in-law's death. At 68, she carried the weight of outliving too many loved ones, including her husband who had passed 10 years earlier. She had moved closer to Michael after Sarah's death, taking on the role of part-time caregiver for Emily, while harboring deep fears about her son's emotional state. The trauma of watching Sarah deteriorate had left Margaret fiercely protective of what remained of her family. She viewed any woman who showed interest in Michael with suspicion, convinced that no one could understand the depth of their loss or be worthy of stepping into Sarah's place. Her love had transformed into a fortress, keeping potential hurt at bay but also blocking the possibility of healing. The city around them pulsed with the relentless energy of modern America, a place where success was measured in numbers and weakness was something to be hidden. Amelia's corner office overlooked Manhattan's skyline, 40 floors above the street where Michael mopped floors and emptied trash cans. Yet, despite the literal and figurative distance between their worlds, they inhabited the same building 5 days a week, their paths destined to cross in ways neither could have predicted. The contrast between Amelia's gleaming corporate environment and Michael's modest apartment in Queens spoke to the different choices they had made in response to tragedy. Where Amelia had thrown herself deeper into work, building higher walls of professional achievement, Michael had stripped his life down to its essentials, finding meaning in the simple routines of fatherhood. Both approaches were valid, both were incomplete, and both left them yearning for something more. The morning after the disastrous blind date, Amelia arrived at her office earlier than usual, hoping to lose herself in quarterly reports and market analyses. The building was still quiet. Most employees not due for another 2 hours. She wheeled herself through the lobby, nodding to the night security guard who was finishing his shift. The elevator seemed to take forever, and when the doors finally opened on her floor, she was surprised to see lights already on in the hallway. Michael was there, methodically cleaning the windows that looked out over the city. He wore simple navy coveralls with his name embroidered on the pocket. His movements efficient and practiced. Their eyes met in the reflection of the glass, and Amelia felt a flush of embarrassment, wondering if he remembered her from the night before. "Good morning," Michael said, turning to face her properly. His voice carried the same gentle quality she remembered from the restaurant. "I hope you're feeling better today." Amelia was taken aback by his directness. Most people pretended not to notice her struggles, maintaining a polite fiction that everything was always fine. "I'm managing," she replied, then found herself adding, "Thank you for what you said last night. It was kind of you." Michael set down his cleaning supplies and really looked at her for the first time in the bright fluorescent lighting. Despite the wheelchair, despite the emotional turmoil he had witnessed, there was a strength in her posture, a determination in the set of her jaw that spoke to battles fought and won. "I meant what I said. That man was a fool. Anyone who can't see past." He gestured vaguely, then seemed to reconsider his words. "Anyone who can't see you for who you really are doesn't deserve your time." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the early morning shift, employees beginning to trickle in with their coffee cups and morning chatter. Amelia excused herself, wheeling toward her office, but something made her pause at the door. "I'm usually here early," she said, not quite sure why she was sharing this information. "If you ever want to talk, I mean, while you're working, it gets quiet in the mornings." Michael nodded, a small smile crossing his features. "I'd like that," he said simply, then returned to his work. As if executive CEOs regularly invited janitors for morning conversations, over the following weeks, their morning encounters became a routine neither had planned but both came to anticipate. Amelia would arrive to find Michael working on her floor, and they would exchange a few words that gradually lengthened into actual conversations. She learned that he worked the early shift to be home when Emily got back from school. He discovered that she had redesigned her entire apartment after the accident, installing ramps and lowered counters, refusing to let the wheelchair limit her independence. They talked about safe topics at first, the weather, the news, the coffee shop that had opened across the street, but gradually, inevitably, their conversations deepened. One morning, about 3 weeks after that first encounter, Amelia arrived to find Michael sitting on the floor beside his supply cart, his head in his hands. She wheeled closer, concerned. "Michael, are you all right?" He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "Today would have been our anniversary," he said quietly. "Sarah and I. 14 years. If she were still here. Some days, it just hits harder than others." Amelia understood that kind of ambush grief, the way it could tackle you without warning on seemingly ordinary days. She positioned her chair beside him, not saying anything at first, just being present. After a moment, she spoke. "Tell me about her. What was she like?" Michael's face transformed as he talked about Sarah, the way she laughed at his terrible jokes. How she could never quite fold fitted sheets properly but insisted on trying. Her obsession with mystery novels that she would figure out by chapter 3, but read anyway. Amelia listened, truly listened, in a way that few people did anymore. When he finished, she shared her own story, not about lost love, but about lost identity, about the woman she had been before the accident and the struggle to figure out who she was now. "The worst part," she admitted, "is feeling like I'm a burden before I'm even a person. Like the chair is all anyone sees. That man at the restaurant, he took one look and decided I wasn't worth the effort of dinner. And maybe he's right. Maybe I'm asking too much. Expecting someone to take on all of this." Michael stood then, moving to face her directly. His voice was fierce when he spoke. "Don't ever say that. Don't let people like him make you believe you're anything less than extraordinary. You run a major corporation. You've adapted to a life-changing injury with more grace than most people could imagine. You show up every day and face the world, even when the world is cruel. That's not weakness. That's strength most people will never have." Their conversation was interrupted by the sudden appearance of a small whirlwind in the form of Emily Reed. School was closed for a teachers' conference, and Margaret had dropped her off to have lunch with her father. The 7-year-old burst through the stairwell door, her backpack bouncing, her face bright with excitement. "Daddy!" she called, then stopped short when she saw Amelia. Her eyes widened with curiosity rather than fear or discomfort. "Oh, hello. Are you Daddy's friend?" Michael started to introduce them formally, but Emily was already moving closer, fascinated by Amelia's wheelchair. "That's so cool," she said with genuine enthusiasm. "Does it go fast? My friend Marcus has crutches, and he can go really fast on them. He says it's like having superpowers." Amelia found herself laughing, a real laugh that came from deep in her chest. "It can go pretty fast," she admitted. "Want to see?" She gave a little demonstration, spinning the chair in a tight circle that made Emily giggle with delight. "This is Miss Carter," Michael said, finally managing the introduction. "She runs this whole company." Emily's eyes grew even wider. "The whole thing? Even the cafeteria?" "They have the best chocolate chip cookies. Do you decide about the cookies?" "I delegate cookie decisions," Amelia said solemnly, "to very important cookie experts. But maybe you could give me your professional opinion on them. We could all have lunch together. If your dad doesn't mind." Michael hesitated, aware of the boundaries being crossed, the lines between their worlds blurring. But Emily was already chattering excitedly about cookies and asking if Amelia's office had windows and did she ever see birds up this high. Something in his chest loosened, watching his daughter interact so naturally with Amelia, seeing none of the barriers that adults constructed. The lunch in the executive dining room was a revelation. Emily was enchanted by the floor-to-ceiling windows, the view of the city spreading out below them like a giant map. She peppered Amelia with questions about everything from how elevators worked to whether she had ever met the mayor. Amelia answered each question seriously, never talking down to the child, treating her curiosity with respect. Michael watched them interact, saw the way Amelia's face softened when Emily showed her a drawing she had made of a princess who was also a scientist, complete with a lab coat over her ball gown. "She's in a wheelchair like you," Emily explained, pointing to the carefully drawn figure. but she invented a special formula that makes plants grow super big so no one would ever be hungry. She's the smartest princess in the whole kingdom. Amelia traced the drawing with one finger, her eyes suspiciously bright. "She's wonderful," she said softly. "Can I keep this?" Emily beamed. "I can make you another one. I could draw you as a princess. Daddy says you're the boss of everyone here, so you're kind of like a queen, right?" After lunch, as Michael walked Emily back to the lobby where Margaret was waiting, his daughter tugged on his hand. "I like Miss Amelia," she announced. "She's nice and she listens when I talk. Can we have lunch with her again?" Michael glanced back toward the executive floor, his heart pulling in directions he hadn't expected. "We'll see, sweetheart. Miss Carter is very busy, but she looked sad when we left." Emily observed with that startling perception children sometimes displayed. "Like how you look sometimes when you think I'm not watching." Maybe she needs friends, too. The truth of his daughter's words stayed with Michael through his afternoon shift. He had seen that flash of loneliness when they said goodbye, the way Amelia's professional mask had slipped back into place like armor. He understood that kind of protection, the way you could build walls so high that even you forgot what was behind them. That evening, as he helped Emily with her homework, his mother watched from the kitchen doorway. "The building manager mentioned you had lunch with that CEO today," Margaret said, her tone carefully neutral. "The one in the wheelchair." Michael kept his eyes on Emily's math worksheet. "Her name is Amelia. Emily's school was closed, and she invited us to lunch. It was kind of her." Margaret moved closer, lowering her voice. "Michael, be careful. You've been through enough. Emily's been through enough. Getting involved with someone like that, with those kinds of challenges." "Someone like what, Mom?" Michael's voice was sharper than intended. "Someone successful? Someone kind? Someone who made Emily laugh for the first time in weeks?" Margaret's face crumpled slightly. "Someone who will complicate your lives. You have to think about what's best for Emily." "I am thinking about Emily," Michael replied. "I'm thinking about how naturally she connected with Amelia. How she didn't see a disability, but a person. Maybe we could all learn something from that." Over the next month, the morning conversations continued, evolving into a friendship neither had expected. Amelia learned about Michael's past career in finance, his analytical mind still sharp despite years away from the field. She found herself asking his opinion on market trends, discovering his insights were often more valuable than those of her highly paid analysts. Michael, in turn, saw past the CEO title to the woman who doubted herself, who wondered if she was doing enough, being enough. One morning, Amelia arrived to find a small gift on her desk. A new drawing from Emily, this time of 3 figures holding hands, one in a wheelchair, one tall with a mop, and one small with pigtails. Underneath, in careful, childish handwriting, were the words, "My new friend, Miss Amelia," and "Daddy and me." Amelia stared at the drawing for a long moment, feeling something crack open in her chest. This 7-year-old child saw her as part of a unit, a natural extension of her small family. It was so simple, so pure, untainted by the complexities adults imposed on relationships. Michael appeared in her doorway, looking embarrassed. "I told her not to bother you with her drawings. She insisted I bring it up before you got here." "It's not a bother," Amelia said quickly. "It's beautiful. She's very talented." "She gets that from her mother," Michael said, then seemed surprised he had mentioned Sarah so easily. Sarah was an artist. Painted, mostly landscapes. Emily has her eye for color. "You must miss her terribly," Amelia said softly. Michael moved into the office, something he had never done before, taking a seat in one of the chairs facing her desk. "Every day. But lately, it's been different. Less like drowning, more like remembering how to swim, if that makes sense." Their eyes met and held, something unspoken passing between them. Amelia felt her heart rate quicken, a sensation she had thought lost, along with the feeling in her legs. She was about to speak when her assistant knocked, reminding her of an 8 o'clock meeting. The spell broken. Michael stood quickly. I should let you get to work. But Amelia, would you like to have dinner with us? At our place, I mean. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti, Emily's favorite. She's been asking when she can see you again. Amelia felt tears threaten. In all the months since her accident, no one had invited her to their home, not for a casual family dinner. There were work events, formal occasions where her presence was professionally required, but not this simple inclusion in everyday life. I would love that, she said, meaning it more than he could know. The dinner was scheduled for Friday night. Amelia spent an absurd amount of time choosing what to wear, finally settling on jeans and a soft sweater, wanting to look approachable rather than corporate. She arrived at Michael's building in Queens, a modest but well-maintained complex with a ramp that looked recently installed. Michael met her at the entrance, and she wondered if he had arranged for the ramp. The super put it in last week, he said, seemingly reading her thoughts. Said it was overdue, making the building more accessible. But she saw the paint on his hands, the telltale signs of recent construction work, and knew he had likely spent his own money and time making sure she could enter easily. The apartment was small but warm, filled with Emily's artwork on every wall. The furniture was mismatched but comfortable, and the smell of garlic and tomato sauce filled the air. Emily bounded over immediately, grabbing Amelia's hand. Come see my room. I want to show you my art supplies. The evening unfolded with a naturalness that surprised them all. Emily chattered through dinner about school, her best friend Marcus, the book she was reading about a detective dog. Amelia found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years, the constant pressure to perform, to prove herself worthy despite her disability, simply absent in this small, warm kitchen. After dinner, while Michael washed dishes, Emily curled up next to Amelia's chair, showing her a photo album. This is Mommy, she said, pointing to a woman with Emily's same bright eyes and warm smile. Daddy says she's in heaven now, watching over us. Do you think she can see us from there? Amelia touched the photo gently. I think the people we love never really leave us. They stay in our hearts, in our memories, in the way we see the world because of what they taught us. Emily considered this seriously. Daddy's been happier since he met you. He smiles more. Maybe Mommy sent you to help us not be so sad. Michael, listening from the kitchen, felt his throat close with emotion. He watched Amelia smooth Emily's hair, saw the tender expression on her face, and realized that somewhere along the way, he had begun to fall for this remarkable woman. The thought terrified and exhilarated him in equal measure. As the evening wound down and Emily was sent to brush her teeth, Michael walked Amelia to the door. Thank you for coming, for being so wonderful with Emily. She doesn't open up to many people. She's an amazing little girl, Amelia said. You've done an incredible job raising her. I muddle through, Michael admitted. Some days better than others. But tonight felt right. Complete. Somehow. Before Amelia could respond, Emily appeared in her pajamas for a goodbye hug. As she wrapped her small arms around Amelia's neck, she whispered, Will you come back? Please? If your dad says it's okay. Amelia whispered back, her eyes meeting Michael's over Emily's head. It's more than okay, he said softly. It's hoped for. The drive home was a blur for Amelia, her mind replaying every moment of the evening. She had been in relationships before, had thought she knew what connection felt like. But this was different. This was being seen, truly seen, not as a CEO or a woman in a wheelchair, but as simply Amelia. It was intoxicating and terrifying. Their relationship evolved naturally over the following weeks. Dinners became a regular occurrence, sometimes at Michael's apartment, sometimes at restaurants that Emily picked out. Amelia found herself keeping art supplies in her office for when Emily visited, and Michael discovered that his old financial instincts were awakening, sparked by conversations with Amelia about market strategies. But not everyone was pleased with the developing relationship. Margaret watched with growing concern as her son smiled more. As Emily grew attached to Amelia, she saw danger where others saw hope, complications where others saw possibility. The confrontation came on a Thursday afternoon. Margaret had arrived early to pick up Emily from school, deciding to stop by the building to speak with Michael. Instead, she found Amelia in the lobby, waiting for the elevator after a meeting. "Miss Carter," Margaret said, her voice formal, "I think we need to talk." Amelia sensed the tension immediately. "Of course, Mrs. Reed. Would you like to come up to my office? This won't take long," Margaret said, glancing around the empty lobby. "I need you to understand something. My son has been through hell. He lost his wife, his career, everything that mattered to him except Emily. He's finally found some stability, some peace. And now you're here, complicating everything." Amelia felt each word like a physical blow. "I care about Michael and Emily very much, Mrs. Reed." "I'm sure you do," Margaret continued, her voice not unkind but firm. "But caring isn't enough. Michael doesn't need another loss. He doesn't need to become a caregiver again, to watch someone he loves struggle with medical issues. And Emily doesn't need to get attached to someone who might not be able to be there for her in all the ways a child needs. Can you honestly tell me that your condition won't limit what you can do for them? That it won't become a burden?" The word burden hung in the air between them. It was Amelia's greatest fear, verbalized by someone whose opinion mattered deeply to the two people she had come to love. "You're right," Amelia said quietly, her voice steady despite her breaking heart. "I am limited. I can't run with Emily in the park. I can't help Michael with physical tasks. There are doctor's appointments, adaptations, challenges that come with my condition. If that makes me a burden, then perhaps you're right to be concerned." Margaret seemed surprised by the admission, but before she could speak, Amelia continued. "But I can love them. I can support Michael's dreams, encourage him to use his brilliant mind again. I can help Emily with homework, teach her about art and science and the power of perseverance. I can show her that limitations don't define us. I may not be what you envisioned for your son, Mrs. Reed, but I promise you, no one could love them more." Margaret stared at her for a long moment, then turned and walked away without another word. But the damage was done. The word burden echoed in Amelia's mind, growing louder with each passing hour. That night, Michael called, excited about a financial report he had read, wanting to discuss it with her. Amelia kept the conversation short, pleading a headache. She did the same the next day, and the next. When he suggested dinner that weekend, she claimed a work emergency. The lies came too easily, each one building a wall between them. Michael knew something was wrong. Amelia's warmth had been replaced by professional distance. She stopped coming to the office early, timing her arrivals for when she knew he would be on a different floor. When they did accidentally meet, she was polite but distant. The connection between them seemingly severed. "Daddy, why doesn't Miss Amelia come over anymore?" Emily asked one night, her voice small and confused. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, sweetheart," Michael assured her, though he was equally confused. "She's just busy with work. But she was busy before, and she still made time for us," Emily pointed out with irrefutable child logic. "Maybe she's sad again. We should make her feel better. Like she made us feel better." Michael stared at his daughter, struck by her wisdom. They had been so focused on their own healing that he hadn't considered that Amelia might need healing too. But from what? What had changed? The answer came when he confronted his mother that weekend. Margaret was babysitting Emily while he supposedly ran errands. But instead, he sat her down for a conversation. "What did you say to her?" he asked without preamble. Margaret tried to deny it. But Michael knew his mother too well. Finally, she admitted to the conversation in the lobby, justified it as protecting him and Emily. "You called her a burden?" Michael's voice was dangerously quiet. You took a woman who has fought every day to maintain her independence, who has shown nothing but strength and grace, and you called her a burden? I was thinking of you, Margaret insisted. Of Emily. You don't understand what you're signing up for. Michael stood, pacing the small living room. No, Mom. You don't understand. Amelia isn't Sarah. This isn't about watching someone I love deteriorate. This is about choosing to love someone who has already faced her worst-case scenario and emerged stronger. She's not dying, Mom. She's living, fully and completely, in spite of everything. And she's taught Emily and me to do the same. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. I just don't want you to hurt anymore. The only thing hurting me right now is losing her, Michael said firmly. Mom, I love her. Emily loves her. We were becoming a family. And you, he trailed off, the weight of what had been lost hitting him. Then fight for her, Margaret said quietly, surprising him. If she means that much to you, don't let my fears cost you a chance at happiness. Fight for her. Michael knew what he had to do. But Amelia had become expert at avoiding him. Her assistant running interference, her schedule suddenly packed with meetings and travel. He needed a different approach. The opportunity came in the form of the company's annual charity gala. Amelia would have to attend as CEO, and Michael convinced the event coordinator to let him work the event, despite it being outside his usual hours. He put on his best suit, the one he had worn to job interviews in his former life, and arrived early to the hotel ballroom. Amelia arrived in a stunning navy dress, her wheelchair decorated with subtle silver accents that matched her jewelry. She was radiant, commanding the room despite being seated. But Michael could see the sadness in her eyes, the way her smile didn't quite reach them. He waited until she was momentarily alone, between conversations with board members and donors. Then he approached, not as the janitor, but as the man who loved her. You look beautiful, he said simply. Amelia's breath caught. Michael, what are you doing here? Fighting for us, he replied. I know what my mother said to you. I know she called you a burden, and I know that's your worst fear. That you'll be too much trouble, too complicated, too difficult to love. Michael, please, Amelia whispered, aware of the people around them. Not here. Yes, here, he said firmly. In front of everyone. Because I want them all to know that I love you. Not in spite of your wheelchair. Not with caveats or conditions. I love your brilliant mind, your terrible jokes, the way you eat pizza with a knife and fork. I love how you've made Emily feel seen and valued. I love your strength and your vulnerability. You are not a burden, Amelia. You are a gift. Tears were streaming down Amelia's face now, and she didn't care who saw. Your mother was right, though. There are things I can't do. Things that will be harder because of my condition. Michael knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. And there are things I can't do. I can't give you a luxurious life. I can't erase the pain of what happened to you. I can't be the successful financial analyst I once was. But I can love you. Emily can love you. We can be a family. Imperfect and complicated and real. Isn't that enough? Before Amelia could answer, a small voice piped up from behind Michael. Please say yes, Miss Amelia. They turned to find Emily there in her best dress, Margaret beside her looking uncomfortable but determined. Emily? Mrs. Reed? Amelia was confused. Margaret stepped forward. I owe you an apology. I let my fear speak instead of my heart. Michael's right. You're not a burden. You're the woman who brought my son back to life, who made my granddaughter laugh again. If you can forgive a foolish old woman's fears, I would be honored to welcome you to our family. Emily didn't wait for adult formalities. She launched herself at Amelia, hugging her tightly. We're going to be a family now, right? A real family? Amelia held Emily close, her eyes meeting Michael's over the child's head. Yes, she said, her voice strong and clear. A real family. The ballroom erupted in applause. Apparently, their drama had drawn quite an audience. But Amelia didn't care. For the first time in 5 years, she felt whole. Not because Michael completed her, but because she had finally accepted that she was worthy of love exactly as she was. 6 months later, they were married in a simple ceremony in Central Park. Amelia wore her grandmother's wedding dress, altered to flow beautifully over her wheelchair. Michael couldn't stop smiling, and Emily served as flower girl, scattering rose petals with enthusiasm and precision. Margaret sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face, no longer tears of fear but of joy. The reception was held at Michael's apartment building's community room, transformed with Emily's artwork and twinkling lights. Their colleagues from the building attended, janitors and executives mingling freely, all there to celebrate love that had transcended boundaries. In his wedding toast, Michael spoke about second chances. Life doesn't always go according to plan. Sometimes it breaks us in ways we never imagined. But if we're lucky, very lucky, we find someone who sees our broken pieces not as damage but as character. Someone who doesn't want to fix us but to grow alongside us. Amelia, you've taught me that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone whose imperfections complement your own. Amelia's response was typically direct. Michael told me once that I deserved better. He was wrong. I didn't deserve better. I deserved exactly him. Someone who saw me not as inspiration or tragedy, but as simply Amelia. Someone who taught me that needing help doesn't make you weak, that accepting love doesn't make you a burden. Together, we're not perfect, but we're perfectly ourselves. Emily had the last word, as she often did. Standing on a chair to reach the microphone, she announced, "My daddy was sad for a long time. And Miss Amelia, I mean Mom Amelia now, was sad too. But together, they're happy. And that's what families do. They make each other happy, even when things are hard, even when legs don't work or mommies go to heaven. Families find ways to be happy together. And we're the best family ever." As the evening wound down, Amelia and Michael found a quiet moment on the building's rooftop garden, the city lights spreading below them. Emily was asleep in Michael's arms, exhausted from the excitement. "No regrets?" Michael asked softly. Amelia reached for his hand. "Only one. That it took us so long to find each other." "Maybe we found each other exactly when we were meant to," Michael suggested. "When we were ready to see past our own pain to the possibility of joy." A year later, the three of them would move to a larger apartment, one specifically designed for accessibility but also for family life. Michael would return to financial consulting, working part-time from home while still maintaining his janitor position, finding meaning in both roles. Amelia would continue to run her company, but with a different perspective, implementing policies that better supported employees with disabilities and those dealing with family crises. Emily would grow up surrounded by love, understanding that families came in all shapes and configurations. She would continue to draw, her art evolving but always featuring her unique family, a mother who happened to use a wheelchair, a father who found dignity in any honest work, and a grandmother who learned that love meant letting go of fear. On quiet Sunday mornings, they would have pancakes in their pajamas, Emily chattering about her dreams, Michael reading the financial news aloud for discussion, Amelia teaching Emily to play chess on the special board with raised squares she could feel. These moments, ordinary and precious, were the true victory. Because in the end, the story wasn't about overcoming disability or tragedy. It was about three broken people who chose to heal together, who discovered that wholeness didn't mean being without scars, but learning to see beauty in the healing. It was about a love that didn't erase the past but honored it while building something new. Every heart, as Amelia would often say in her speeches afterward, deserved a home. Not a perfect home, not an easy home, but a real home, where love was measured not by what you could do, but by who you chose to be. And in choosing each other, Michael, Amelia, and Emily had created something stronger than any of them could have built alone. A family founded not on shared blood or conventional expectations, but on the deliberate, daily choice to love without conditions.